Well, hi, algebra class. I thought we'd move outside today and let's talk about a pretty easy concept, solving inequalities. Let me move around here so you can see and I can write on the board. When we solve inequalities, um, the easiest ones to solve are going to be the ones that involve addition and subtraction. But really, all of them are solved almost the same way as you just do a regular old equation. So if I had x plus 2 is greater than 3, I solve that the same way. I just can pretend almost like that's an equal sign. So if I'm adding 2 here, I'm going to undo that by doing the opposite operation, which is subtraction. When I move that over to this side, I end up getting x is greater than 1. If it was subtraction, you would do the opposite operation. If it was x minus 2 is greater than 3, now instead of subtracting, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to move that over and I'm going to add 2, and I'll get x is greater than 5, or a bad 5. Okay? So solving these is no problem at all. Almost just pretend like that's an equal sign. And it doesn't matter if this is a greater than or even a greater than an equal sign, then it is an equal sign. And you do it just the same way that you normally would. The trick comes in, not the trick, but the trickier part comes in if we do operations that involve multiplication or division. And with a lot of the multiplication division, it's really not going to be a problem. Like, for instance, if you had 2x is greater than 6, I want to undo the multiplication, so I just bring the 2 over, and instead of multiplying, I'm going to divide by 2, and I get x is greater than 3. Okay? No difference between that and equations. If I had x over 2 is greater than 3 again, I undo the division sign by multiplying, and I get x is greater than 6. Now, the only trick comes in when you're solving inequalities is when you have a negative coefficient. Remember, a coefficient is the number being multiplied by the variable. So when the number in front of the variable is negative, everything kind of goes a little wonky. Okay, it's a little bit like, I don't know if you know about the Superman comics, but Bizarro World, where everything's the opposite. Superman there, instead of being good, he's bad. Well, it's a little bit the same. Because if you think about inequalities, they're pointing up the number line or down the number line. When we multiply them by a negative number, it's going to kind of change everything. It's going to make it flipped. Let me show you what I mean. If we had negative 2x is greater than 3, now instead of multiplying, we're going to divide. But do you see that we're dividing by a negative number? So when we bring that number over and we divide by negative 2, we have to do one additional thing. So can you see that it would normally, or the way you'd think about it would be x is greater than negative 3 halves. But because we're doing it by a negative number, this sign needs to be flipped. And so now instead of it being x is greater than, it's going to be x is less than negative 3 halves. Let's try a division one. X over negative 3 is greater than, and this time I'll do equal just to change it up, 6. So now we were dividing by a negative number. So whenever you're doing it by a negative number, dividing or multiplying, and you're undoing it, you're going to end up flipping this sign. So we would normally bring this over, multiply by -3, but flip the sign. So now it's going to be x, instead of greater than, less than or equal to -18. Okay, does that make sense? So to sum it up, you solve inequalities almost the same way that you solve equations, with everything except when you have a negative coefficient. If you're dividing or multiplying the variable by a negative number, then in addition to solving it the normal way, we're going to flip the sign. That's all there is to it. Okay, get back to your ukulele playing and laying in the hammock. All right, bye.